dive into a world of untold narratives with the podcast that explores the unseen quadrant of the Johari window of our lives. Here, we uncover the hidden stories and unspoken truths of extraordinary individuals, revealing what others don't know about us, but what we know about ourselves. This is the Bottom Left Pane. Hey guys, and welcome to the Bottom Left Pane, where we dive deep into the hidden corners of our guests' lives. In this episode, we're joined by Devin, a man of diverse passions and profound insights. From the challenges of ultramarathons to the intricate world of podcasting, Devin's journey is a mosaic of unique experiences. He shares not only his love for Yerba Mate, a South American tea, and running, but also opens up about his personal battles, including his road to sobriety and just the pursuit of a more authentic life. Join us as we explore how Devin's varied interests have shaped his life's path, offering lessons in consistency, overcoming adversity, and embracing vulnerability. Awesome. Well, Devin, honestly, it's so great to have you today. Thank you so much for jumping in to do this interview. I think we can go ahead and just dive right into it, right? So let's go ahead and just kind of start off and, can you briefly introduce yourself and share what, you're comfortable telling us about just kind of your background and, just things you might be interested in, just who you are?
Well, thanks first, Luis, for having me on your show. It is an honor to be on. I love your setup and everything. You've got a really good, you're an inspiration for me as a podcaster. So, for you guys that are listening, he's doing a great job here. And I to answer your other question, though, was about introduce myself. I did kind of struggle to write a bio because it's like, well, what do I say about myself? Like,
right.
Like how do you describe yourself to people? It's like, because it depends on who's asking, right? And this is what we'll, I'm sure, talk about later in this episode, is that I have this whole thing about Yerba Mate, which people don't know anything about. And I don't usually tell a lot of people about it because it's like, I got to explain it and go all this thing. And it's like, then they ask all these kind of questions. It's like, you know what, like, you don't really care. I'm not going to waste your time, basically. So
right.
As far as like introducing myself, it's like, well, I'm Devin. I grew up in Arkansas. Like, I live in Tennessee, got a wife and 2 kids, just kind of the generic stuff, right? But there's a couple of things that I put on that one pager that I don't know, because it's true and it sounds like attention getting, but I mean, it is true. I am a podcaster, so that's, I'm sure we'll talk about. And then father, that's important to me, because it's like, that's my legacy, and it's a lot of values in me, and that's something, another thing, another topic maybe. But the other one is like ultra marathon runner, so not many people
Nice.
know what that is, and that's a kind of crazy thing, but people that run a marathon and then run longer. So I kind of just got into that. I know it sounds stupid, but I didn't run at all. I don't have a history of running. I just was kind of one of those challenges, and then it grew into a bigger challenge, and I take a lot of that stuff that I do in that running aspect and apply a lot of that to life. And it helps me in a lot of things, believe it or not, of applying some of those principles of just like, just keep moving forward, progress, and also endurance, of like resilience and stuff in life and all the problems and whatnot. And I apply a lot of those things to kind of my life. So I don't know, that's, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, no, honestly, so a couple of things. Yeah, first off, like I'm so glad you pronounced it Yerba Mate. I was gonna ask, like, because I heard about this when I was in college, right? Like, people were always drinking this for studying and stuff, and I was always curious because I wasn't too sure if it was pronounced Yerba Mate or Yerba Mate. Oh, nice. Is that what it is?
Yep, this is a tradition. Well, this isn't a traditional, but because it's glass, it's not made out of the actual like gourd or the
Right.
wood. But yeah, this is the mate and then the yerba in there, and this is called the bombilla, or the straw. But yeah, so
nice. Well, actually, so on that too, like, so where does it originate from? Like Argentina, or where does it originate from?
yeah, so this could be a controversial topic, but it's in that area that borders Brazil, Paraguay, and Argentina, is kind of like the mecca for yerba mate. And people will, where does it originate from? It's like, well, it depends on, who's asking, right? But
Yeah.
But it's mostly drinking in South Brazil, Paraguay, Argentina, and Uruguay as well. There's other countries that do drink it, but that's kind of like, I guess you could say, where it starts from. So
Yeah, and on that too. So, what got you so interested in the specific drink? Like, was it like the flavor or just what brought you to, I believe you're like an ambassador for them, right? Or something like that?
Yeah, well, yeah, self-declared ambassador. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
because uh, no, I mean seriously though, this is kind of the whole thing of this podcast is like, and this hopefully encouragement to your guest as well is like following your passions, even if they sound silly.
Mm,
Like me, I'm a white guy in the U.S., so I'm not Argentine. My wife's Argentine though, so it's like, well, what business do I have talking about yerba mate? Because it's not my culture, it's not my, I didn't grow up with it, but
right.
I've adopted it all and learned it all from my wife, and so as her being part of my family, being part of me, it's like I embrace that and take it as not as my own, but you know, if I'm describing this correctly, it's like, well, it's not mine personally, but it's mine to share, like with all these benefits that I've enjoyed, and I want other people to experience those great things as well. So, basically, long story short is that I got into it because of my wife, basically.
Right.
Her always drinking it, and so I started drinking it, and all the health benefits and all the other cool stuff and cultural things that I've learned about it, and then I just basically created an Instagram page and started sharing because I felt like, okay, what do I do with this? And I always had this like back of my mind, I should like, do something with this. What do I do? Like, do I start like a company and sell Yerba Mate, or do I, you know, I don't know. So I just kind of started posting on Instagram about stories and whatnot, and then realizing there's a community and finding more people.
Mm,
And then that turned into a podcast that allows me to network with so many people throughout the world that you would never know otherwise. But putting it out there allowed me to find these people in the world, like in China, Vietnam, South Africa,
mhm.
um, Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, places you would never think of. Um,
They're just
that
all passionate about this drink.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, a lot of the people, especially like, yeah, completely. Like, there's this guy in China that's like, super passionate, and it's like your Mate has nothing to do with China, like at all.
Right.
He just really loves Messi, and Messi drinks mate, so that's basically it. And
Right.
yeah, um, it's crazy, right? So when you, I guess, follow those passions, you find other passionate people, and I guess that's also encouragement because you're never alone. You're not alone. There's at least one other person out there that enjoys it, and if it's just one, then that's fine too. It doesn't have to be hundreds of people. I think that's what social media will want you to, their version of success, right? Versus what are you successful? And so that's why I say you're a Mate ambassador, because I really am promoting this throughout the
Right. Right.
world. Like, our podcast's been downloaded in like 38 countries. So, I've, countries that I've not even been to. So, it's not like I, have friends there. It's like just internet.
Right. 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 So the yerba mate or the marathon running, are these one of your secret passions? Like, have you talked to the world about this, or what would that be?
Well, they were bottom left panels
Mhm.
until, I don't know, a year ago, maybe.
Mm, okay.
You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, and I think it's interesting, because yeah, it's like no one can know until you say it, right? I guess.
Mhm.
Um, and then it's this, at least for me, it's kind of not a shame necessarily, but I think this is something for most people is like their passions or things that they really like, they self-critique and thinking that the world is going to critique them on it or whatever for whatever reason.
Right.
It could be anything, but you just assume like, hey, I don't fit in this topic, right? And that's why it's the world doesn't know about it because it's not obvious or whatever. And so, as a mental thing of survival, we don't want to stick out of the crowd too much because, if you're ostracized and you're cut off from the tribe and you die, but it doesn't
Mhm.
really happen. But that's our, you know, primitive brain or whatever. And so we kind of leave it here, I think, in that bottom left panel. And then one thing I'm learning is just putting it out there more. Like, it's funny how people actually encourage you more, it seems like. And then also it's like, I wasted my whole time in fear for nothing. And I think the other thing too, if people will say things, and that's okay because not the whole world's not gonna love you. I mean,
Right.
if you wanted the whole world to love you, just sell ice cream. I mean, but also I think like that I guess the other fear too of like people, whatever. And unfortunately, the truth is most people are too self-absorbed in their own self to really give a crap about what you're doing. It's like,
Right.
I'm not looking at you. I'm more concerned about my own hand in front of my face. Like, I don't know, but it's just my own observations of me working through some of this stuff myself.
Yeah. Okay. So then on that though, like what was it about these passions that made you want to keep them hidden though? Like why
Well,
not start sooner?
yeah, and that's I think that's the my fear, whatever. Is like, okay, I don't fit into this box, and then like, I could talk about Yerba Mate, maybe 10 people like it, and it's like, whatever, like, well, what's the point kind of thing. And also, like, I don't know, I don't want to have to, it's like you think people won't accept it or whatever, and then it's like, I don't want to have to explain it to my friends and family or whatever, right? It's like the people
Mm,
closest to you is the ones that bother you the most, but in truth, they're probably the ones that are going to support you the most. It's like, at least in my mind, that's what I'm thinking, because it's
mm,
like, the random strangers on the internet, let's say, they're the ones that are most supportive, right? In my mind, because it's like, yeah, because they know nothing about me other than this thing,
right.
right?
Right.
But all my other friends, family know all of this stuff. They don't know this thing. So it's kind of, I don't know, a paradox there. Um, I think there's some kind of imposter syndrome as well involved of like, especially with like Yerba Mate and marathon, at least for me, because the imposter syndrome for me for Yerba Mate is like, well, yeah, I'm a white guy from the U.S., right? So what do I know about Yerba Mate, right? That's
Mm,
and then as far as marathon run, it's like, I didn't do it in high school or college. I wasn't a runner, and I'm not built like some athlete. I'm not a, Kipchoge or whatever, running 2-hour marathons or anything. It's just I'm just a normal guy that just enjoys it and not bad at it, but it's like I'm no world record
right.
holder either,
Mhm.
and it's kind of like it's a weird thing of self promotion, because you want to be proud about something you do, but at the same time you don't want to like be that guy that's like, oh look what I did,
Right. Right. Right.
I think that's another paradox too. If you want to talk about the things to promote, but you also don't want to put yourself out there like one of those annoying ads. It's like I've made $10 billion and here's how.
Right. Right.
So
Yeah. So on that too. So what did it feel like when you were able to start? Yeah, showing this with the world, like when you felt like, hey, now's my time to start talking about this, let people know what I'm into.
So, the podcast, anyways, it was a total serendipitous thing. So, the how it started is basically, I think it was, I don't know if it was during pandemic or not, but started posting on Instagram probably about 2 years ago, and just like, I'll just give it a shot. Why not? Right? I'll start a page and see what happens. And I made maybe like 3 or 4 posts, and I was like, okay, this is stupid. What am I doing?
Mhm.
What a waste of time. And I just stopped for like a whole year. And then like a year later, we took a trip down to Bolivia. So this was last year. And there is Yerba Mate down there. It come kind of influencing from Argentina. And so found a store down there, checked them out. And I was like, you know what? I should post about this because this is interesting that it's here in Bolivia and, maybe do some reviews on some of the different yerbas. And that was just basically my thinking. So I was like, and one of my friends kind of told me kind of the same thing. If you're passionate, why don't you just do it just for fun anyways, do a hobby or whatever. I don't know.
Right.
So hey, okay, fine. And I just kind of started doing it, and then of course it started to grow, and it was like, huh, okay. So I just kind of kept doing it, and then I did some Instagram lives, like talking with some people, just kind of having chats about hey, why do you like your mind, blah blah blah, just doing basically this, except on Instagram live or whatever, and
Mhm.
then I realized, okay, well, this is fun. Number one, like, okay, well, I should do something with this, and you always, I think not everybody, but most people have like, I should start a podcast about blah 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 topic, but they never do anything right
Right.
with it. And so I just kind of posted it out there to um, my followers, like, hey, should I start a podcast or whatever? Just I don't know, just see what happens. And so many people voted for it. Yeah, oh, you should do it. It'd be great. Oh, I'd love it. I'm like, really? Like, you guys want a podcast about this? Like, who's gonna listen to that? Like, what a waste of time. Like, you really want to listen to this for me talk about this for 30 minutes? And in my mind, because I'm just so harsh on myself in that way. But realizing, no, it's providing a lot of value to people that have all these questions and want to know, and they want to hear about your experience. They want to hear your story. Like they they want to hear your story. Like tell your story. Like don't shortcut it. Like it's something I'm learning too of like just like, oh yeah, you're about to whatever. Like no, they want to know like how did you get into it? Why do you like it? What do you think about this? And so just the more doing that and finding more people, networking with more people, because having more people on guests and stuff, and it just kind of started taking off. I mean, still very early in the stage, but I'm saying the growth has been pretty amazing. So I don't know if that answered. That was a really long, sorry,
No,
winded
honestly, that's
question.
great. Yeah, like yeah, like that first off, like just it still is really interesting to me how this can all just come from one drink, like to me it was just something that people were drinking in college. I had it a couple times just to kind of study here and there just because everybody was trying it. But to hear that you're so
Mhm.
passionate about this, like it really puts things into perspective, like especially too, right, you talking about how a lot more people were interested than you thought it might have been, because everybody's story wants to be told and everybody just has questions about it. Like you never really know what people are going to be into, right? um and it does make me wonder too, like I haven't had, again, yerba mate in like since college, like a few years ago, but like like what flavors out there, like what's your favorite?
Sure. Well, selfish, I mean, shameless plug. Um, I did an episode about my like top 5 recommendations and stuff,
Okay.
and my personal favorites and blah blah blah. But anyways, as far as flavors wise, there's not really. There are some that are flavored, so I'll be straightforward. A lot of people usually don't like it their first time because it's kind of bitter. It's a bitter green tea, basically, is the best way to describe it.
Right.
But it's kind of like, and I say this too, is like people drink black coffee or drink, alcohol that tastes like crap, and and they get used to it. It's kind of like that accustomed taste. Like, it's so I guess I kind of throw that comment aside because like, oh, just because you tried it once doesn't mean you can't just completely stop trying it. But um, as far as like, I forgot the original question. You were talking about flavors and stuff and getting it, but what other question was there?
Yeah, just to kind of like what your favorite flavor was, like what kind of flavors are
Uh,
out there. Like, I mean, yeah, like anything about like, what would it taste like really to somebody that might not have tried it before, right? I mean, you already kind of
yeah,
touched upon it, but
yeah, and so I guess just another thing too, like Anna Park is one of my current number ones, which is it's an organic yerba mate from Argentina.
mm,
Um, but because now it's getting big in the U.S. now, there's a couple different companies and stuff that do sell it here in the U.S. And especially up where you are in New York, there's a lot more in the Northeast,
mm.
like companies. There's several up there in New York that started businesses and stuff. There's one in Philadelphia. There's like 2 or 3 in New York. There's one in New Jersey. Um, so there's Toma. So shout out to Toma. He's in New Jersey. There's Circle of Drink in New York. There's Yerba Mate Lab in New York. There's Yerba Crew in Philadelphia. And there's several in Florida, even out in California. But yeah, so
Okay, so
companies that sell
yerba
it.
mate is not. I'll be honest with you. I thought it was a brand in itself.
No, there's whole kinds of. It's just like coffee, right? In the sense of
Ah,
it's the tea. It's the loose leaf tea, right? Basically. And so the brands are going to be just like Folgers or Nespresso or whatever, right?
got it.
So
Okay, that
Anna
makes so much
Park
more
is one
sense.
of those brands. There's CBC, there's Taragui, there's uh,
Koyaki.
Playerito, there's Guayaki,
Yeah,
um, yeah, and there's all kinds of, and there's now, especially in the U.S., there's a lot of the canned like energy drink yerba mates. So that's kind of usually the easier way for most Americans to get into it versus the whole traditional way because it's a little more complicated and all that stuff. And so yeah, Guayaki, Clean Cause, Yerba. Um, there's a couple others I found. I can't think of off the top of my head. Icaro is in Baltimore.
mhm.
Um, those are just a couple that I know off the top of my head. There's another one. I can't remember the name, but yeah, there's a couple different ones
Yeah,
that have
that's
those
so funny
cans and
though,
stuff.
because like
Guayaki
yeah,
is obviously the biggest name by far. Yeah,
I was about to say that was the
in the
only one that
U.S.
I
for
know
sure.
about. Yeah,
Yeah, that's the biggest name by far in the U.S.
dang, you really learn something new every day. Because in my mind, I was thinking, yeah, like this Koyaki, this brand, like was like what it was. Yerba mate was specific to them, but yeah, I guess can you give me a little bit more like history behind like what yerba mate actually is then? Because obviously, like somebody like me could just be like, oh yeah, Guayaki, like that's the only thing we know about, right?
Yeah. So here, one quick second. I'll show you one bag that I have. Speaking of
Yeah,
Harry
no
Potter.
problem.
So it's like I said, it's kind of like loosely kind of green tea is about the best way I can kind of describe it. I'm trying to. I don't know if you do anything with the video, but there's like some of it, if you can see there,
Okay.
kind of like what it looks like as far as.
Almost looks
And
like
this is
oregano.
like a bag. Yeah. Well, that's the thing is this is the bag like it comes in
Uh-huh.
for Anna Park and comes in a half kilogram or a kilogram bag. So that's the other misconceptions in a lot of videos and explaining like people thinking I'm doing some kind of marijuana or something or whatever because it's I got a half kilo bag of suspicious looking oregano or
Right.
whatever. So um, that's a common misconception of stuff, especially when you're drinking it like this and filling it water and stuff. So, anyways, that's a common, I guess, running joke and whatever. But um, it's called Ilex paraguinensis. Paraguinensis is like the scientific term for yerba mate. But basically, it comes off of a tree. It's leaves, a holly kind of type of leaf. So it's not the same as like tea leaf, I guess, in that sense. But it has caffeine. It has, vitamins like, yeah, it's got like A, B, and some other magnesium and other stuff in it, like uh, all the antioxidants is what I'm saying. It has a lot of antioxidants like green tea, but you still get a good amount of caffeine. And it
Mhm.
also has theobromine and theophylline, which theobromine is in cacao or chocolate. So you get this euphoric, feeling, and theophylline, and so it's the way that the caffeine is released is a more steady and clarity versus just like a punch of crash and jitters. And
Right.
no offense to coffee, but that's the kind of the
That whole crash.
switch there, and that's the
Yeah.
whole thing. Is like it's not a crash, it's not a jitters, it's a sustained kind of almost calming energy and clarity, and that's kind of
Mm.
the huge benefits that, for me personally, health benefits in that is the reason I'm personally like it and can help convince people to give it a try. But deeper, way, way, way deeper than that, it started by indigenous people called Guarani, which are native to like kind of that region, especially in Paraguay. That's actually the native. Well, let me put it this way: that's one of the official spoken languages in Paraguay is Guarani.
Mm.
So not Spanish. They do speak Spanish, of course, but Guarani is the one of the official languages. So that indigenous people started drinking it, and then the Jesuits that came in from Europe and converted the people and everything. They adopted the yerba mate and they kind of spread it all over, commercialized it, I guess, back in the day, essentially, to where it is today. And that's, I guess, the kind of history of it. But also, the one thing that I always try to explain to Americans that don't fully get it, or not even just Americans, but people that are not from a yerba mate culture,
Right.
is that so this is the mate, and like you just fill it with water. So me, I'm the person who starts. If I'm the person that started, I'm called the cebador, which is the person that prepares the mate. I drink the first one and then I pass it to you.
Oh,
So
interesting.
however many people are with us, 1, 2, 3, 10, I'm the person that prepares it for everyone. So I'm like the host. And we share the same straw, which I know freaks most people out, but it's the communal aspect of it. It's the connection. It's the that's why it's deeper than that too, and that's the like bond, I guess you could say, because we're literally, you know, sharing DNA, I guess you could say. It's like we literally
Right.
connected, and it's I know it sounds kind of whatever gross to most people are, I guess, but people share other things and don't even think about it. I actually had someone on. It's like I've seen women share lipstick, and there's of course guys that share joints and stuff like that, and you share a drink, and like why is this any different? It's just the kind of like the cultural stigmas or whatever. Not saying that you have to share the bombilla to enjoy it, but that's the cultural part to explain it as
Right.
far as the connection and connecting to ancestry, but also connecting to history and the person with you, of course, and having it's just like any other thing that we do together. Like it's a shared experience that allows us to connect and have conversations and stuff. And that's kind of like the extra beauty about it. And especially because now that it's literally throughout the world, it's like, now you can connect with people, all over the world over a drink, essentially. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I would have never guessed that there was this whole like ritual behind it like that, right? Like almost like the peace pipe where you're just kind of passing it around, right?
Yep.
Um, like so, what, like, how has this not only just the yerba mate in itself, right, but like the podcast too? Like, how has this like influenced like your relationships with people, right? How have you been able to use it as your ritual, right? Like passing around this information of the yerba mate.
Yeah, so it's allowed me to, well, a platform, I guess,
Right.
to communicate whatever. Yeah, it's about yerba mate, but I realize it gives me a platform to communicate essentially about whatever I want. This is just the vehicle, I guess you could say, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Or the stage or whatever. It's not necessarily just about yerba mate as far as like, yeah, I can go into all the how tos and stuff, but it's also allowed me to talk about other things as far as rituals and habits and whatnot. I actually celebrated a year of sobriety from alcohol, and I was on another podcast called That Sober Guy Podcast. He's a big deal, but because I was able to share my 1 year of like sobriety and how yerba mate played a part in that, in the sense of having a positive outlet of replacing bad habits with good habits. So in other words, instead of drinking alcohol, drink this. Instead of using my wasted energy, I used kind of my creative energy to, the podcast and everything else. And it's kind of like some of those things and tying that in, if that makes sense. And so also talking about, marathons, right? And athletic performance and endurance, and how there's studies about yerba mate, and that it can, help athletic performance. It's the studies are kind of, how can I say, not inconclusive, but there's no hard evidence, but I can still talk about that. And well, here's what I've experienced, whether the science is out there or not. I drink it, I run. Here's how I feel. Not saying I'm a doctor by any means, because I'm not. And I'm not saying I'm a professional athlete, because I'm not, but this is just my shared experience, my personal experience. And this gives me a outlet for that. So, and even talking about this, allowing me to be on talk about your hidden passions or whatever. It's like, this is just the thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No. Okay. So I'm kind of interested too, and you talked about how the two can be related, right? Like, or how the yerba mate has been able to help you with your running and stuff. Because I'm also curious about that and like how you got into that. Just in my mind, I'm thinking, wow, like, so is this like the magic pill to help me start running, right? Like, talk to me a little bit about, what it's done for you in helping you in that aspect of like the running part of your life.
Yeah, so my wife and I drink it first thing in the morning. That's just kind of the ritual, and also it's just the same thing as anybody drinks a coffee first thing in the morning, but it's this instead. So that kind of like is my anchor, I guess you could say, for my starting my day, and then I usually run afterwards. And you know, because they're kind of tied, you know, I can definitely tell you when I haven't drank yerba mate versus the same thing. Like if you hadn't had your coffee this morning, it's the same thing. It's like, I'm foggy or whatever, versus or how you're feeling, right? The more, whatever. So there's that. And then also like, um, because you're drinking water, so I can't prove, but as far as hydration and stuff like that, and I think just in general, a little bit of caffeine. There's studies on that too, about, because obviously it gets your blood flowing and things like that. So, you know, to help your body move, you know what I'm saying, to get you going, right?
Right.
Versus, if it makes you run faster, I can't, that. But obviously you're more present, and obviously your blood's kind of, your system's going, I guess. So,
Right.
As far as that goes, that's, one thing for sure. I can say, but yeah.
Okay. So let's kind of shift into this, right? Why did you get into running? Like, yeah, talk to me a little bit more about that.
So something in my life, I think, and this is something maybe in general for most people too, when you have those challenges, once you surmount them, or just it's uncomfortable, but then after you do it, then you're like, huh, wasn't so bad. I didn't die. And then it challenges you to grow bigger and do something better. So I basically, for my 30th birthday, did a half marathon just on a whim. Because I had a professor at the time that used to run Ironmans and do all these things, and he had all these medals and stuff and hanging in the back of his office. And I just asked him about it. There happened to be a half marathon basically in the town we were living on my birthday. So I was like, it'd be my birthday challenge or whatever. I just
Right.
go with it. Ran a half marathon. I didn't die. I didn't do great. Obviously, I finished it though. That's all that mattered, right? And then I was like, well, I didn't die. I wonder what a marathon would look like. And it probably took me about another year and a half before I actually stepped up to try that challenge. But then after I did the marathon, I was like, well, I didn't die. It sucked a lot. I'm not gonna lie to you, but okay, I can do it. Finished it, and there's like 1% of people in the whole earth that can say that. And so it's like, well, you know, then like I said, the whole applying a lot of things in life about just training consistency, overcoming obstacles and just enduring even when it sucks. And like, so I guess seeing all that stuff and also help just running anything physical really, I think helps give you some clarity and get some kind of good energy going in general, whatever that is for you. But running's just been a good thing for me, and I just keep doing it, I guess, because when I stop doing it, I feel one way, I feel like crap, and then when I do it, not that I'm not tired, but I feel a lot better about myself and you know all the positive things that go with that. When you're in a better state of mind or better
Okay.
state of being.
So on that, right? Half marathon didn't kill you. You
Yeah,
said you just did it on a whim, right? I'm curious, did you do
yeah.
any kind of training before that? Like, or
No,
did you, oh, you
no,
just got up and
just
you're like, let's
no.
do this.
Yep. I had some like Walmart shoes, some gym shorts, and like a long sleeve shirt because it was kind of cold that day. It was actually 29th is my birthday, so it was like whatever it was 4 years ago. And so yeah, I totally just basically my professor said, well, you just got to jog for 2 hours, and
Mhm.
and I was just like, okay, fair enough, like, and that's basically what I did. Uh, and and that in my mind, that's all I knew. So I didn't like overthink it. I just like, well, I just got to go out there and just jog for 2 hours, basically. Pretty much what I
Jeez,
did.
okay, that's kind of crazy.
But
I
no,
mean,
I
you
didn't
just
train for it
gotta,
at all. Um, yeah, and then obviously, yeah, for the marathon, I definitely trained because it's a whole different beast. But
right.
and I'm not saying you shouldn't train at all. I'm definitely saying you should. But the half marathon is a little more forgiving than the full, as far as like you know time and distance, right? So
So then, okay, so you said you did the half marathon, the marathon, and then earlier you talked about doing ultra marathons. So what? Yeah,
yeah,
what's the difference there? Like, how many more miles is that?
anything over 26.2 really is technically ultra. I think officially after 27 it's officially ultra, but that's the thing is like it doesn't really matter. But there are people that do 100 miles, 200 miles, just ridiculous things. The
Yeah,
furthest I've ever done was 46, and I did it like overnight for like 10 hours.
sorry,
So yeah,
miles.
yeah, 46 miles. Yeah,
Yeah, what was
yeah,
that like? Like, what was your body feeling like? I can only
it was
imagine.
long, um, and I was tired because it was overnight. That was the worst part, actually.
Right.
Believe it or not, was just staying up. And believe it or not, I know this sounds crazy, but I was less sore, less like I felt better actually after finishing that 46 than I did after my last marathon. In other
Oh,
words,
okay.
I guess because you're not running fast the whole time. Sometimes you're even walking. So just to be, I didn't run 46 miles the whole time, right?
Right, right, right.
Just declaring that. I walked, stopped, ate, you drink, stuff like that. So, um, but yeah, so that's one thing. But I felt more refreshed because you have to kind of pace yourself too, right?
Yeah. So on that too, what's it like kind of doing this overnight? Like, are you running with like flashlights? Like, do you have people like kind of behind you,
Oh,
like
it
in a car
was,
or
yeah.
something? Like,
No, it was on a horse track, so I was running like half-mile loops all night, hamster wheel kind of thing, and it was
no way.
brightly staged and light and everything. So it
For
wasn't
46 miles, you ran
yeah,
around a track.
I wasn't alone. So there was a whole ton of people out there, and it was kind of a somewhat of a event and everything. But yeah,
That's
it was
crazy
definitely the
then.
hamster wheel thing is definitely annoying. So I will say this, just so I'm not completely crazy. There's other people that do this, but the running ultra thing, it's a thing. But I personally, so I did my last marathon and I hated it. So I didn't exactly enjoy it. And because I was trying to achieve like a time, basically.
Mhm.
And that kind of gets into that mentality of like, you have to finish it in a certain amount of time. But the truth is, it doesn't matter. No one gives a crap about your time.
Right, right.
Like, you're not winning any awards. And for me, if I was competing professional, maybe then. I'm just a normal guy, right? And so that's when my experience kind of sucked. So I chose to make my miles matter. In other words, when I run now, I mean, when I do a big event like that ultra, I did it to raise funds and awareness for like to end human trafficking
Okay.
organization that I partnered with, and so that gave me an extra reason or passion for doing it because it had nothing to do with running 46 miles. It was to like essentially get attention, and not in a it's I feel like I have to explain this, but it's like I'm not really. It's not about me running. It's to get you to look at me and ask, well, why are you doing this? Here's why,
Right.
right? And
Just
that's
the bigger cause.
that's why I'm saying, it's a bigger cause. Like, it's not look at me. It's like, hey, look over here. This is why, kind of thing. I guess. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
No, 100%. Yeah, it's the running. The running is to get the attention, but the attention is
Hmm.
being diverted to the cause. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So on that, right, a question that I had was, you talked about how you use some of these like things that you've learned from running, like in your everyday life, right? So what are some of those things that you've now had to, like these lessons that you kind of move into the life?
Biggest thing would be consistency.
Hmm.
And this is true for like everything in life, I think, personally, because I see it so much. It's producing a podcast episode consistently coming through every week, no matter what, rain or shine. You know, you and I both know if you record a couple ahead of time, you can get ahead of yourself, so you
All
don't have
right.
to do it. Like you can take a week off and still get it done. But the thing is, you were consistent. You put in the work before, so you can take some time off later or whatever, right? Same thing with anything else you do in life. If you keep showing up consistency, keep showing up consistent, doing the thing you have to do, you'll get your reward. Whatever that is. And so with running, the same thing. Like you don't just go out and run a marathon. Like I guess you could. It'll suck completely. And I mean, technically you can. I mean, you could walk a marathon, and I've seen people do it. But I guess what I'm saying is like, you want to get better at it. You got to keep putting in effort. You got to keep training, whatever it
Right.
is. And so even myself, after I finished that 46 miles, I basically took a whole month off. I did like nothing. Like, have you seen the movie like I think it was Endgame, where like Thor just goes
Mhm.
off to the island and retreats and binges for like a month, and they're like, what?
Yeah.
What? Yeah, basically that's what I did. I was just like, my life sucks. I hate this. I'm done. I'm not gonna run again. Woe is me. You know. And then after finally, wallowing for a little while, and then get back out and run, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I'm so out of shape after just a month of not doing anything right. It's like how quickly you can atrophy, is that the right word? um, where
Not too
like the
sure.
muscles weaken and stuff, but
Mm.
in other words, like you get out of the routine, and then how quickly that momentum will stop.
Mhm.
The ball keeps rolling until you stop pushing, and it'll go for a little while, and then after a while you got to start all the way over again and pushing it back uphill. And
Right.
that's basically what happened to me. Is like, okay, I was running 46 miles or whatever, and I was running at this pace, and then after taking that month off, it was like I had never ran before. It was like,
Mhm.
man, like this, I should be doing twice this fast, and twice this long, and it's like I'm done. Like, and it
Right.
took a whole nother about a month of putting in work to finally get back to kind of like where I sort of was. So, yeah, just to stay in motion, I guess, stay consistent, keep doing whatever you're doing, even if it's just whatever simple thing it is. It doesn't matter. It's like that one thing is if you just keep doing it, like,
Mhm.
it doesn't have
So
to be
I,
this huge thing, but you just focus on the basics, I think.
yeah, so on that too, you talked about like, moving from your phase from this Thor, right, in Endgame to, all of a sudden now being into ultra marathons and everything. I'm curious, earlier you talked to about like, you becoming you recovering from your addiction and everything. Was either um the yerba mate or the running, like was this really key to, becoming sober and also helping with your recovery?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it's giving you like, using some energy in a positive way, I guess,
Right.
for sure. I will say, I'm a man of faith, so I definitely believe, God, and that's my whole keeping me to be able to do it. So I guess I just want to say it's not just me and sheer willpower and stuff. And I have accountability. There's another group of guys that I message with often. But, it really just kind of started as a challenge to like just go for a year, see if you can make it a year essentially. And, I had so many bad experiences with alcohol in my life that I find, you know what, enough is enough. Like, I'm tired of waking up feeling like this, and I got a family to take care of. I got to be more responsible. Like, I got two little kids. Like, I can't be living this kind of life. This is not the man I want to be, right? This is not the
Mm-hmm.
man I should be, or I want to be personally. Like, I got to do this for myself. I got to do this for them. I got to do this for other people. Like, so that, I guess it's just all those layers of things. And it wasn't like, I guess just to say that encouragement for people that think you have to be like some, you know, like super addicted guy that's laying cracked out on the street and go through a 12-step program. Like, I didn't do any of that stuff, and I wasn't this super horrible monster, like, that was skipping work and just going getting drunk or anything. But I still
But it wasn't
wasn't
a issue.
who I wanted to be. It's like,
Right.
so I guess you don't have to be this super evil monster and go through this program. Like, you can just stop. Like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to do this. Like, I want to be this person. So just go for that. And, I guess putting something positive, replacing bad habits with good habits, I guess, if at all possible. I think that's, something. So instead of, staying out late or whatever, I go to bed early and I get up early and go work out, like in that running. So therefore, because I'm tired and I got up at 5 in the morning, I'm not going to stay out till 10 because it's like, I'm done. Like, so I'm
Right.
not going to
Yeah.
be at that party because I'm already asleep. Like,
Yeah. So on that too, like, it sounds like you must have needed a lot of support while you were doing all this, and especially too now that you continue to do all this. So what does your support system look like as you kind of either moved into your recovery phase, and also to just uh, like still working with these passions, right?
yeah. So as far as the sobriety, it's actually a pretty simple system. I have this thing or this app. It's called like I am sober,
Mm-hmm.
and I check in. It's just an app. You check in, and there's like your pledge, basically the reason why you're doing it. Which I wrote out my why. Pretty simple of just like, my family is important. It's costing me energy and finances, and that's my extra layer of like, hey, if I save, even if it's one drink a month. That's like, let's say that's $5 to $10. Like, well, that $5 or $10 per month, and then I can use that for something else. I can go buy some more running shoes or something, like.
Right. Right.
So it's like that's an extra thing. But yeah, just check in, pledge like I'm gonna stay sober today, and then at the end of the day, it reminds you again. It's automatic notifications, whatever, and that's okay. I'm sober today. So there's that, and then there's this group of guys that just kind of message, and then just talking about it. I guess letting more people know. Like at first, I was kind of careful to say it. Like I told my wife and maybe like my brother and maybe two friends that I knew were already like sober or whatever, just to let them know. But at first, I didn't want to make it like public because what if I like slip or whatever, And then it's like, and then so I just started talking about it more about 6 months and then 10 months and then now a year to like, okay, now it's like now more people, just complete strangers like you and everybody else knows. It's like, well, I can't go back, and not that I want to, but I guess
It's
you
like
know
a
what
way
I'm
of
saying.
holding
Like,
yourself accountable, right?
yeah, exactly. So that as far as accountability and that, and then podcast. Obviously, if an episode doesn't show up, well, hey, what's going on, right? So it's kind of like I have this audience depending on me essentially, in my mind. I mean, I'm not saying that they are, but in my mind, it's like, well, I told them I was going to do this, so I'm going to do it.
Mm.
Um, um, yeah, I guess those are the main things. And then with racing or with marathons or whatever you want, or for running, it's like the easiest thing there is just picking a race, like a date on a calendar. I've heard this from this Spartan talk or whatever, the Spartan race. It's
Mm.
like put a date on the calendar. That's the easiest form of accountability that's going to happen. Because, okay, even if you do it 2 years from now, whatever date you have on that calendar, it's going to get closer and closer. And you may put it off for a while, but one day that day is going to come where that race happens. And you're either
Mm-hmm.
going to perform or you're going to get your butt kicked. And then you're going to realize, all right, like I got to get it together. So
Mm-hmm.
it's going to happen whether you want it to or not, like just picking that date. And even for myself, like I had that ultra marathon planned for like 6 months. I wasn't really training until it started getting closer and closer. And I was like, I'm not prepared. Like I got to get this together.
Okay. Yeah. 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 So you kind of touched up on it a little bit, but like, what kind of advice would you give to people that like, are still trying to find their voice, right, and wanting to
Hmm.
talk about their hidden passions and also like just try something new?
It's a great question. Um, and I know it sounds stupid and simple. Well, maybe not stupid, but it sounds, you know, I think you're overthinking it because I'm saying this to myself. Just try. Just do it. Because there's never going to be a right time to do it. There's never going to be a right day or moment. Like, I'm sure when you started your podcast, the same thing probably Pat in his episodes, was like, just pick a date, 4 months from now, 6 months from now, 6 weeks from now, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's like, just commit to it. Just whatever it is, make your commitment today. I'm going to start whenever you're going to start. Doesn't mean you have to start today, although the sooner the better.
All right.
Just commit and just do it. And figure it out along the way, because you're never going to have all the information. You're never going to have it all figured out. Just, you got to start now. Like, the first episode you record is going to suck, and that's okay. The first exercise you do is going to suck, and that's okay. Like, just keep going. Like, I don't know, like, just give it a shot and lower your expectations, because, whatever you're doing for the first time, it's not going to be perfect, and it shouldn't be, because if it were, then, well, what have you been doing the whole time? Yeah.
Right.
But so I don't know, just do it, I guess. And if you need inspiration from maybe, what I did too was an Instagram, at least, is you can find, just search for other accounts. You'll stumble across someone somewhere that's doing more or less what you want to do, probably more than anything, because with the internet, it's easier than ever to just put your stuff out there.
Anything, yeah.
So, I mean, whatever you're into, underwater basket weaving, if you type it in there, there's probably at least one other guy that's posting on Instagram about underwater basket weaving, and then, you guys connect and go whatever, so.
Right. So moral of the story, yeah, we've got to look into underwater basket weaving. That's the thing.
Yeah. As much as people talk about it, there's got to be like this whole like super elite group of underwater basket weavers
Somewhere,
that
right?
make like, underwater swan, baskets and stuff,
Dude, no, but I love that. Honestly, I think that's kind of the right way to go, right? Like, even too, as you talk about that, like, I think about, yeah, just doing this podcast and everything. Like, it's really just, you have to try and start somewhere.
Start somewhere.
And on that too, so how do you envision the process of becoming like more authentic and like opening up about the hidden aspects of your life and these hidden passions? Like, what impact do you hope it'll have on you and those around you?
Yeah, so this has been tough, I'll be honest, to be more and more authentic, because, and I'll be honest too, because I don't want to share everything on the internet, you know what I'm saying? I don't
Right.
post too much about my kids, because I think about it like, unfortunately, the world's a dark place, and especially if I'm doing anti-child human trafficking, I kind of don't really want to put my kids on the internet, like, this is just the way my mind works, is because of like I'm not ignorant, but at the same time, like, I want to be wise, I guess. So I don't talk about everything necessarily that pertains to me, but I do try to be more vulnerable, like my sobriety, and talking about that on my episode. And I talked about kind of like overcoming fears and doubts. I just basically expressed my own fears and doubts of this things that we just kind of talked about, and like being more human, I guess, with your audience allows, because everybody's fighting a battle that you know nothing about. Like, I think I took that from Tim Ferriss, who took it from someone else, but you just don't know no one else is perfect. No one else got it together. Like, the more real you are, the more people are going to understand. Like, and if you go first, it gives someone else the permission to go second. Like, if you just put yourself out there, that'll give someone else the courage. Like, okay, he admitted it, he said it, so I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one screwed up. Like, no, that's the lie we believe, that we're the only one. Like, man, I've been meaning to, start a podcast, or I've been meaning to quit drinking. It's like, now that he said it, oh, great, because like, this is a normal guy. This isn't some, crackhead. Like, this is just a normal guy that whatever, like the stigma or whatever, and like, okay, if he can, I can't. I mean, I try to say that, like, look, I'm nothing special. Like, I just put forth the effort, and I mean, I do have some skills, I guess, as far as, I'm not as, some people may be more afraid to, be on camera or something, for example. Like, that doesn't really bother me as much. And those, so I'm saying, like, some things I can use my strength, I guess, and, but at the same time, like, if you don't do it, like, I'm not saying I love my voice either, but after you talk you listen to enough of your own episodes after, recording and editing and stuff, you realize, hey, I don't sound as dumb as I think I sound, and
Right.
and and besides, like, people aren't criticizing you as much as you are, right? Like, I don't know. I kind of feel like I'm brain dumping some stuff here, but
No, it's great. Yeah, I love it.
I think it's just, once again, just start, and um, you don't have to put your whole life out there as far as authenticity. You can just share parts of it. You don't have to share your whole. I guess that's to go back to the original question, and you can do it little by little. You don't have to, just throw everything out there. I let little parts of my story, come out and whatnot. And, obviously with wisdom, I don't share everything about, what I do for work and all that stuff, because it doesn't matter. It's none of your business. But also it's like, that's not really what I'm talking about here. It's like, it's more of me versus, you know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
No, yeah, that makes sense. And on that too, you brought up a big point, right? Like, there's so much stigma around, like, when you talk about things sometimes, right? And especially when it comes to recovery. So if you have any advice for people about like handling that stigma and wanting to talk about that, like, what could you give them? I know you said like just do it for some things, but what about in the case of like something that's a little more sensitive like this?
Yeah, I mean, if you know someone that's a good friend, I would say probably start there. And as far as sobriety specifically, I mean, that Sober Guy podcast, he's a really great inspiration. His podcast, I highly recommend. Shane Raymer, I'd reach out. I'm sure he'd be glad to. He has a whole 30-day challenge and all kinds of other stuff on his website. So just as a simple, practical resource. But I would say just in general, yeah, probably, you've got some close friend somewhere, or maybe someone that you know of that's already going through something or whatever. And, it's hard to find, who's trusted, right? But I think if you let a little information, if you don't completely trust them and see what happens, before if they tell everybody and their friends, then obviously, you can't. But hopefully you have at least, one other trusted person in your circle somewhere that you can reach out to about whatever it is, um, but if you never tell anyone, then, there's nothing, I don't know, it's just hidden. It's not helpful.
Yeah, I honestly, I love that. That was great. Yeah, it really has me thinking about like, the struggles of what people go through, especially too when it comes down to recovering from something like this. Not where I expected the conversation to go, but I appreciate, what you had to offer. I promise I'll let you go. So this is kind of the last thing I do right on the show. I like to just kind of ask these random questions just to kind of like take away from the seriousness of the conversation about like, the hidden part of your life and everything, and just to kind of, just cleanse the palate a little bit, right?
Oh, yeah.
So the question I have for you today is,
Okay.
What person would you want as your life coach and motivator, and why?
Ooh, that's a deep question and tough. So the first person that just came to my mind was Ben Franklin.
Mm.
And obviously he's not alive anymore, so it's a hypothetical question, right? But I've always been a fan of Ben Franklin because we talked about this before. I think we recorded about all of his curiosities. He was an ambassador to the U.S. I mean, he helped found the Declaration of Independence. He started the first basically fire club, or what I mean, basically started the profession of being a fireman, I guess, because libraries and stuff. He started a basically public library. He helped found a university, I think. Obviously all his science experiments with electricity and stuff with the kite and all that, but he was also a avid swimmer. And stuff like people don't know about it. It's like all these random things that you're like, man, I would have loved to meet this guy. And so just like, how did he, come from basically just a random guy that, worked in his like brother and dad's like printing press office to, write books and be an ambassador and swim and whatever, learned French and went to France, and like and this was back in 1700s, like yeah, I want to learn from that guy, so I don't know, that's just the first person I thought of because the things he did and cool is like, man, yeah.
So interesting. I would have never guessed, but like, yeah, Benjamin Franklin, what a guy. Well,
Yeah,
honestly,
$100 bill, I mean, dude.
right? Yeah, for something, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much today. I honestly appreciate the conversation. Can you just talk about, where people could find you if they want to, learn a little bit more about the Yerba Mate, running, like anything like that?
Yeah. So, well, thanks, Luis, for having me on. It's been an honor. And it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. Be happy to do something like this again, or I would love to have you on if you want to. Um, but Yerba Mate Power is on Instagram, so like at Yerba Mate Power,
Mhm.
and got YouTube there too. It's about all I'm working with there. And the Yerba Power podcast is the podcast, which is streaming everywhere. Most people are either Apple or Spotify, but you can find it anywhere you listen to podcasts. So if you want to send me a message at any time, I'm probably the most active on the Instagram of Yerba Mate Power as far as like responding to messages and whatnot. So feel free, to message me there. I don't mind. The YouTube, I mean, I don't really know how to connect with people. Like you can't really message, so that'd probably be the best thing. And then, of course, the podcast, if anybody's wants to be a guest, just reach out to me. Hey, anybody and everybody's welcome. So
Awesome, Devin. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in to The Bottom Left Pane. If you enjoyed our journey into the unseen stories today, don't forget to follow us on social media at Bottom Left Pane on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram. You can subscribe to our show on any platform where you get your podcast to ensure you never miss an episode. And if you're interested in supporting the production of our show, consider checking out our Patreon. Even a contribution as little as $1 a month can make a huge difference. Thank you for your support and for joining us in uncovering the hidden chapters of life. And remember, sometimes the most profound stories are the ones we've never heard before.